I started by assembling the rack that's going to hold the bar. I just glued and screwed the 2x4s together. Now if you want to avoid splitting the 2x4s, pre-drill your holes before driving in the screws. The base for the padded bench is going to be made out of a 3/4 inch thick piece of plywood that I cut with my circular saw. I then cut a piece of Kaizen foam to go over the plywood. I chose Kaizen foam because it's closed cell and I plan on using this bench outside. Once the foam's on, I'm not going to have access to the top of the plywood, so I glued and screwed a 2x4 to the underside of it first. I'm going to have to flip it over to drive in the screws, so I just used my hot glue gun to tack the 2x4 to the plywood. I screwed 2x4s around that 2x4 to make the leg for the bench. 2x4s are really cheap and I want the bench to be quite strong, so I just kept layering in additional pieces and then screwing them together. I then screwed the bench to the rack and screwed on some additional vertical supports. I then screwed on 2 more horizontal 2x4s to help lock the rack to the bench. We want to be able to use this bench outside, so we coated the whole thing with exterior grade house paint. I sprayed a bunch of spray adhesive onto the foam and then placed it on the plywood with some weights on top to hold it firm. Now I'm using a marine grade vinyl for the covering. This is typically used for making cushions for boats. I cut a piece with scissors and then used my staple gun to staple it to the underside of the plywood. I put a few staples in one side and then went to the other side, pulled it tight, and then drove in more staples. If I was to make this bench again, I would let the plywood overhang the leg of the bench just a little bit more so that I'd have more room to staple in the fabric. The whole project took just about 5 hours to build and is quite sturdy.